I currently have 5 breeds in my barn. Of those 5 breeds, I am for sure going to keep my Mini Rex and my Silver Fox always. Then I love my Rex because they're just a larger version of my Mini Rex, so colors. And they're super sweet and easy to handle. And then I'm always threatening to get rid of my Champagne des Argents and my Californians. So I'm currently on the fence of being overwhelmed with the amount of breeds I have, because I keep 4 does for every breed and 1 to 2 bucks depending on what my goals are, line breeding and all that. Now, let's say I were to cut it down to where I only had 2 of my main breeds left, being the Silver Fox and the Mini Rex. I might be interested in another breed. Probably not, just knowing how I am, but maybe. If I were to do that, or I were to get rid of my Californians, I'd probably get New Zealand's. But if I was looking at a more rare heritage breed, I would look at Brevians or American Blues. Somebody said I should totally try out Bretagne Petites. Those are devils in little bunny bodies. If you raise Petites, good on you, they are monsters. Tiny little running monsters. I also really love Palominos and Cream des Argents I would really love to try someday. But for right now, I am fine in the barn, and even if I get rid of most of my breeds, I need a break before I try anything new. The Champagne des Argents have really worn me out when it comes to new breeds, the amount of problems they have possessed me with. But it's fine, everything's fine. We have Belle, Moose, and Cookie. I'm going to eat Belle soon, so we still have Cookie. Somebody wants to talk about my Boo program. But seriously, this is something I could talk about for hours, and it's something that I am constantly told to get off of when it comes to my breeding program when talking to my friends and my husband. Because I can get into my Blue-Eyed White program nitty-gritty. So for those of you who don't know, my passion project when it comes to my Mini Rex are Blue-Eyed Whites. Here is one of my most recent little Boo babies. This jerk was a boy. I need desperately a doe for the next part of my breeding section. So this little man is currently the head sire of a Boo breeding program with one of my friends. And I do believe they named him Blue. But that little man is out of my Gen 6 Boo project, which means he is the 3rd in line of my Boos. So the way I run my Boo program is I will do a generation of strict Blue-Eyed Whites and then a generation where I bring in non-Blue-Eyed Whites to create Vienna-marked babies. Miss Daisy Wazy here is a Vienna-marked baby. Vienna-marked animals will have these random little white spots. And sometimes it'll be off their face, but most of the time it's either on the snip of their nose or on their forehead like this little star. Not to be confused with these little babies who have no nose mark and no ear markings. Because through test breeding of these lines, I know that those are just weird markings. They're not necessarily Vienna carriers. Hold on to a rabbit for over a year not to get any Blue-Eyed White babies. Drives me nuts. But anyway, we'll have these little Vienna marked babies or Vienna carrying babies out of a parent who is a Blue-Eyed White and then a parent who is a non-Vienna carrier. And that's because Blue-Eyed Whites are notorious for having horrible body type and horrible fur type. So the idea is to take a non-carrier like Strawberry and breed it into a Blue-Eyed White program to slowly improve the lines. So sometimes I'll go Blue-Eyed White, Vienna carrier, Blue-Eyed White. And then other times I will go Vienna carrier, Vienna carrier, Vienna carrier, and then breed 2 Vienna carriers together in the hopes that I will get a Blue-Eyed White to try to improve type faster. And the way I do that is through Vienna carrying test breeds. So for instance, Blueberry here is out of a doe that is a Vienna carrier. I know that because Penguin, her mother, is a Blue-Eyed White. So this generation, so this is my 3rd generation away from the Blue-Eyed Whites, I need to see if Blueberry carries that gene, because she's not an outwards carrier. So her first breeding will be to a Vienna carrying buck. And I'm going to have to post part 2 because it gets very complicated. Hey, this comment just in time for part 2! So right now, we are on the idea of breeding Vienna carriers together. So we know for sure this is a Vienna marked baby. She carries the Blue-Eyed White gene. because she is Vienna marked, and I know that these are true Vienna marks. With that being said, I still want to do a test breeding just in case. Now, Blueberry, same litter, same mom, same dad. Blueberry may or may not be a Vienna carrier. So we got to test that out and see. So either way, these are my next two in my Vienna carrying lines that I want to try out. And then if this little Sheila doesn't have the carrying marks, she will be the replacement for our Broken Black program, once we verify she is not a carrier of the Vienna gene against a blue-eyed white buck. With that being said, the reason why I am breeding two Vienna carriers together is to get a blue-eyed white doe. And the reason I want a doe is I want to breed her to Strawberry. So what we'll do is we will take this girl, we will breed her to our Vienna carrying buck, and then we will breed her children to Strawberry, which is their grandfather. And the idea behind this line breeding is we will not only get our blue-eyed white colors, but we will also improve the fur and body quality type by rebreeding them back to a non-Vienna carrying buck. Because Strawberry is just absolutely outstanding. There is no beating his type, there is no beating his fur quality, and with the sheer size that he is, it also helps to offset that a lot of times blue-eyed white babies seem to be failures to thrive, or they seem to be runts. Because Strawberry is so large, hopefully that helps to offset the sickliness that we get out of a lot of boo babies. But none of this can happen until I get a blue-eyed white doe. But moving away from the idea of every other generation being a boo or a Vienna carrier, we also have to be very careful with our genotypes and our color carriers. So for instance, I don't want anything that is a chocolate-based rabbit or carries chocolate. So on the bee lotus, we want everything to be big B, no little bees hiding anywhere, no recessive traits. The reason behind this is if you breed any kind of chocolate into your blue-eyed white lines, you run the risk of their eyes having a red reflect. Meaning, when you take a flash photo of your rabbit, normally their blue-eyed whites look like this. Instead, their blue eyes will almost look like a Californian's eye, but only when you take a picture of it, or shine a light into it. The red reflect is against SOP and can get you kicked off of the show table. When it comes to breeding blue-eyed whites, the way we normally do it is as such. In the first generation, we'll take our blue-eyed white and breed it to a non-Vienna carrier, meaning that every single baby in that litter will carry the Vienna gene, but we won't get a single blue-eyed white. In the next generation, when we have all of our Vienna carriers, we will take two Vienna carriers and breed them to each other. When that breeding happens, we will get 25% that are blue-eyed white, 50% that are Vienna carriers, and 25% that are non-carriers. And the only way to tell the difference between a carrier and a non-carrier is through test breedings. And the best way to do test breedings is to take a blue-eyed white up against the rabbit you suspect is a Vienna carrier and to breed them together. In theory, when you breed a blue-eyed white to a Vienna carrier, you're going to get 50% of rabbits that are blue-eyed whites and 50% that are just simply carriers. But the reason we don't strictly breed blue-eyed white to blue-eyed white is because we are trying to improve type on both body and fur. And unfortunately, there are very few blue-eyed white breeders within the United States, so it's up to us to improve those lines by breeding them to non-carriers and continuing them on through the lines. And although most breeders see the Vienna gene as a pain in the butt, I absolutely love it. Growing up, the friend that got me into rabbits one day had a blue-eyed white mini Rex in her barn. Now, I can't remember if she bought this rabbit from convention or if they had it, but I thought that rabbit was the most beautiful rabbit I have ever seen in my entire life. And I just remember how much her mother was grumping about how ugly that mini Rex was. And looking at it from an adult perspective, yes, that mini Rex that she had, that blue-eyed white, was absolutely wrong. It was an overglorified tube sock with a coat that was very, very wrong. Like, it was a Rex coat in theory, but the density was just off, and it was very splotchy and patchy in its type. But that blue-eyed white rabbit started an obsession for me. In that, not only did I want to have the best blue-eyed white rabbits ever, I wanted to learn more about them. And when I started learning about the Vienna gene and how challenging it is and how much everybody hates the Vienna gene, that sparked my competitive spirit even more. So the reason why I like the Vienna gene so much is childhood mythicism and a way to competitive spirit that just wants to win at the hardest thing possible. Plus, look at this thing. Is it not beautiful? It's gorgeous. I love blue-eyed whites. I love the Vienna gene. But it is something that makes me cry a lot. So it's hard to say with blue-eyed whites if they have a so-called lethal gene. And that's because there are so many other things that come into play when we're talking about rabbits. So for instance, if you're breeding a mini breed and you get a double dwarf gene, within the next couple of days, you'll have this true peanut just die because it doesn't have the appropriate anatomy to survive. But that double dwarf gene has nothing to do with a boo, but a boo could die of it if they were a mini breed like these mini Rex. And then we also have fading kits. And although on average I have more boos that fade than my normal colors, is that caused by the actual boo gene? Or is that caused by the other genes that cause other babies to fade, and I am just unlucky when it comes to genetics? So if I have a litter of 10 and I have one fade that's a boo, and then I have another fade that's a non-boo, but it's the only boo in the litter, is it because it was a boo or bad luck? We had another kit fade out from that litter that wasn't related to the color. I have a theory when it comes down to boos and kind of being sickly, fading out, not looking all that great. And it's that a lot of breeders don't want to separate out their boo lines as much as I do. They want to see a blue-eyed white every single generation, and the gene pool is just too small for that. So y'all know I line breed. I do a lot of line breeding. But I'm very, very careful on my coefficients, meaning how related are the rabbits to each other. I would rather take a couple of generations and breed in new genetics to my lines and get a boo every 3 to 4 generations compared to getting a boo every generation that has health issues. But because of how hard it is to get a good quality blue-eyed white, you see a lot of breeders also don't want to let go of that rabbit. So they breed it into everything. Which I completely understand, but that will completely muddle your lines and make everything too closely related when it comes to line breeding. And when they do get babies out of that litter, instead of heavily culling out the problems, they kind of hem and haw about it just to get that color. And quite often, it's not malicious intent, it's just ignorance to how the gene works and how to appropriately breed your rabbits out of a line through outcrosses. Because it's also something I've seen very popular in the dilute community as well, especially with lilacs and chocolates. So again, I don't know how much of it is related to the blue-eyed white gene itself to where it's lethal, or if it's due to improper breeding practices. For my OG followers who were around when I had Silly Sally, my last blue-eyed white doe, you will know that she produced amazing babies. Her survival rate was around 90%. And she was a hunk, extremely healthy. But she was out of 2 Vienna-carrying parents and not any blue-eyed whites. If you want a little cut and dry answer that I've been given when it comes to first starting out with rabbits, meaning you're breeding mother to son, father to daughter, I've always been told to switch out your bloodlines every 3 to 4 generations. With that being said, the longer you raise rabbits, the more you realize it's just not copy-paste easy answers most of the time. Because not only are we breeding mother to son or father to daughter, we're breeding cousins. We are breeding great-grandmother to great-grandchild. We are going up and down and side to side on that pedigree. All over the place. And what I look at is coefficients and lines of deviation within the pedigree. So what I do in my barn is I run 3 or 4 different lines in my barn at a time. I play with genetics, run them around, and make it to where I can outcross my different lines to my current lines without giving myself much issue. So for instance, these 2 does are full sisters. And let's say I continue to breed them to different bucks. and I use a standard line breeding chart. Eventually down the line, their kits are going to be completely different from each other genetically. And you're only going to have a coefficient of genetic relatedness around 10%, or less in some cases. So it's like having a different line. And you could use those lines as genetic outcrossings. Another thing you want to look at is you want to breed the rabbit and not the pedigree. Although it's super helpful to keep track of how related all of your rabbits are in your rabbitry, sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet on it and just see what the pairing gets you. If you are pairing rabbits together and their kits are absolutely outstanding, they're growing the way you want them to, they're not having any medical issues, then in theory you shouldn't need a genetic outcrossing for a while if you're running your lines correctly. But if you're having problems in a pairing that you're getting genetic malformalities, or you're getting other issues, it might be time to bring in another outcrossing. And that outcrossing could be from somebody else's barn, or that outcrossing can be from your barn because you're keeping careful records of how related everyone is in your barn. So I look for a genetic outcrossing, meaning that the animal is less than 10% related to the animal I'm breeding whenever I start seeing problems in my line. So my tonsils are still pretty swollen, and it's still a bit hard to talk, but at least today I can understand myself. So I'm doing much better compared to yesterday. With that being said, one of the rabbits that I absolutely love in our barn is Daisy. She is a Harlequin, but I would really like to see one day Harlequins be approved for mini-recs. And she's a really poor example of a Harlequin, but I still think she's cute. And the idea is they go like black, orange, and then on the front they have like black, orange on the face as well. So it'd be really nice to see them one day get approved. And I don't know if this counts or not. I have a blue silver fox. I absolutely love blue silver fox. There's a COD out on them right now. We're just waiting for it to get approved by the ARBA. But technically it's a non-showable color. But at the same time, you can take them to show with the COD being out and a judge can give an opinion on the rabbit. They just can't place amongst the silver fox. I'm trying out a new nest box to see if it works any good, because I'm always looking for something new that the mini-recs like. With that being said, if Sadie does have babies, there is hope that in this round of babies, there will be a blue-eyed white. With that being said, I'm not sure if she's actually pregnant. She hasn't gained any weight, and when I palpated, I didn't feel anything. So she might just have a small litter, or she might not be pregnant. With that being said, she started molting like a week ago. So now she has this weird color deviation between the back and the sides of her, which makes her look absolutely ridiculous. But other than that, Sadie's doing really well. And I'm really hoping she has babies.